All right. Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to Road to CTA Salesforce Saturday. It's hosted by Megan Broadkey and myself. I'm Paul McCollum. I am a consultant at Accenture. I have worked for a long time with Mr. Moyez Thanawala for Thanawala Digital. He is here attending as well. This is a monthly meeting where we talk about either CTA exam topics or CTA relevant topics. So it's an architect, a water cooler, and roundtable. So for everyone who made it, I am glad to see you here. I hope we have a good discussion. If not, we'll post the video of this so you can dig in and learn what Tim's got to tell us at a later date of your convenience. So, hey, Tim, you want to introduce yourself and get us going here?
Yeah, sure. Hey, folks. Hopefully the light is okay there. Thank you so much for having me on. Yeah, so I'm Tim Alexander. I am the founder of Sync Foundry, which started off essentially as a consulting agency specifically around helping B2B SaaS ISV companies with defining how their integrations should work. And so before I was doing that, I was a product manager at a company called Splash. I currently function as a product manager at a company called Goldcast. And Sync Foundry was just started off just kind of as that. However, the main reason that I created Sync Foundry after having left Splash for a little bit is that I wanted, aside from doing the consulting, I just had this this problem that I really wanted to sink into. So I kind of always knew that eventually this would turn into a software company. And so when I was a product manager at Splash, we were using Jira, and at some point I ended up starting to use their Google Sheets connector. And with their Google Sheets connector, it just like made my whole life a lot easier, because all of a sudden I was able to make the data that I was using all day come to me, rather than me constantly having to go to the data and go to the UI that I'm sure was designed with a lot of UX research and a lot of good intention, but the reality is a lot of B2B platform UIs are just rough and didn't do what I wanted to do. And so it just made my life a lot easier. And I literally fell in love with this idea of like making the data come to me where I'm at. So fast forward for a little bit, I went through a whole bunch of different iterations of kind of making a Google Sheets plugin that like connected to lots of different things, because there wasn't anything that was just like, I can connect to whatever I want and make whatever I want whatever that data is, come to me where I'm working. Messed around a lot of different iterations. And then as I was doing that, I kind of was like, well, like, what does it mean to have data come to me? Like, where do I spend 100% of my time? Because I spend a lot of my time in spreadsheets and stuff like that, but I spend 100% of my time, even when I'm asleep, in my communications software in Slack. And so what then evolved, or I guess what got kicked off once I ran into that little nugget, that was probably about 2 years ago, where I went down this path of creating a very simple approach to being able to connect to basically any platform that I want and make whatever data that I want available to just sort of come to me in the conversation that I have. So that I'm having. So if you're familiar with in Slack, the Giphy command, that's like one of the most popular commands, most of the popular integrations that Slack has, is the ability to just like pull data pull a GIF and send it into a conversation. The aim was to make something quite just as easy. But instead of it having to pull a GIF, have it pull something useful, like be able to pull from Salesforce, and not just Salesforce, but be able to pull from anywhere. So Salesforce, HubSpot, Marketo, you know, Google BigQuery, Amazon Redshift, Postgres, Eventbrite, MailChimp, literally doesn't matter. And so that was the goal, was to say, like, could I just make a single / command that could pull data from anywhere? And that's what data fetch is. And so data fetch is an app that does functionally that. And I can show that today, and would love to kind of take everybody through that, answer any types of questions, get any types of feedback. You know, that's kind of what it is I'm doing.
So one of the things I want to harp on, if the people are not, if you haven't spent any time living in Slack, you may not get it. I always saw Slack that development teams were using, and I never got it until I lived in it and worked with the integrations. I'm an architect. I spend most of my time communicating. I live in a collaboration space. And when you shift to where you can be collaborating and have the rest of your work process come to you and not have to hop out of your mindset and go mess with this application or pick up this other application, I almost immediately started hating email. You know, why aren't we doing group chats? Why aren't we, you know, it is so easy to spin up a chat, spin up a Zoom, create a calendar invite. All of those basic things that disrupt your work stream live in that Slack ecosystem, and I'm doing the thing I'm doing, and I'm doing all my collaboration. And those are my only 2 applications that I have to deal with. If it's code, if it's diagramming, if it's what have you. So how else have you seen? That blew me away. Once I realized I was living this uninterrupted, non-multitasking lifestyle, now I kind of hate going back to anything else. And I'm starting to bounce back because I have to scan other apps anyway, and I don't have a connected application, but I'm frazzled because I'm managing 5 or 6 different apps at a time. What else have there been any other kind of work productivity discoveries that you've had around that? And like, hey, we didn't realize how much people would, I'm just talking from a UX perspective and living a Slack and a productivity-based centric lifestyle as opposed to a multitasking-based lifestyle.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, it's a funny thing that, like, as whenever you fall in, like, whenever you like kind of start down some sort of new path for yourself, you find out that, like, actually people have been here for a while, and that there's this like a very deep set of resources and research going on to that space. There's a really interesting author and speaker. What's his name? Cal Newport. Cal Newport is the guy, and he is all about deep work. That's his like terminology, I guess. And so the notion that we are constantly spending most of our time distracted by everything, right? That, like, all of those little innocuous distractions that we get, like all the little things where we say, you know, hey, you know, I'm just going to go hunt this bit of information down, this thing where I'm just going to go do blah for a couple of minutes, and then you end up getting 20 minutes of your life just kind of gone because of something that you just, you know, it's just, you're so easily thrown off your game, I guess. That it has been a very interesting, like, it just kind of, it feels like it's a thing where turning something from 5 minutes to 5 seconds doesn't, like, like, maybe it won't have the big wins, but like the reality is, it just means that you're just just can pick and move. You don't have to get distracted with getting lost down the terrible. That's why I'm obsessed with like terrible UIs. I don't want to like learn. I hate having to learn yet another terrible UI or never another way that some person thought to arrange some data. I'm like, I just want the data. I just want the answer. And so yeah, it's just an interesting. I don't know if I have a great, solid, like coherent answer because it's a big, weird, messy world that kind of falling into.
I used to put in my signature a series of numbers, and I'll have to go find them. But it was the numbers 1 through 0 arranged alphabetically. And so just because, yeah, it's like, see how that makes sense? Perfect sense, right? It's alphabetical. No, it's contextually, it's a bad arrangement. Just because you have a pattern doesn't make it a good pattern. You know, reach out. Yeah. So if it's a shared pattern, sure. And that's one of my other things is there's no right UX. It's just especially for information architecture, there's no right information architecture. It's an easy to access and one we all agree on. And if you can do that, that's a good information architecture. So sorry, I digress. I'm a huge new UX nerd. So
yeah, that's exactly that feels very like apropos. It's like in our world we constantly see so many examples where people are like, well, clearly it would make sense like this, and you're like, man, this is
reframe.
This was hard. This is
not... reframe. So what time is it now for you?
Oh, so I'm in Sydney, Australia. So it is 2:24 a.m. for me.
Okay. Thank you for joining us on our time. Is it Sunday or Saturday there?
It is Sunday.
Okay.
It is technically Sunday. No, it's all good. I have a daughter who's not 2 yet, and
you don't sleep anyway.
Yeah, so between living on the other side of the world from most of the people that I work with, along with having a little girl, the concept of time is not much of a thing. So I'm all good.
Great. Well, yeah, let's see data fetch.
Sure. Yeah, so I have a fresh instance here, a fresh little like sandbox I'm going to show. So let me show my screen.
And let me derail for a second. I'll tell you, I'm not a product guy. I don't like doing demos that are advertisements. But having a chance to get to look at this and the way it shifts the conversation back to the uninterrupted work style, I think this is, and I think Salesforce has got it with their application and they're wanting to do Slack-centered development. So I am hopeful that they've figured out what it took me so long to figure out of that uninterrupted, and I posted the link to that book in there. I think that's great that this helps. This should demonstrate what a friction-free work style can be, and why we should all be assuming this pattern and trying to do stuff like this. Now, the fact that you've already done it and it's available for purchase and download, that's just gravy.
Yeah, I'm pretty proud of this thing because it's as far as I know, my world is not 100% Salesforce focused, but it's Salesforce's, pretty obviously probably the most one of the most important connectors I'll ever have, and always it'll have a special place. As far as I know, I'm the only thing out there that can allow users to run SOCWL directly from a conversation. So I'll show everybody exactly all of those things, exactly what that looks like. So here I am in Slack, just to kind of this is just like a dummy sandbox Slack environment used for demo purposes. And if I wanted to say run some sort of conversation here, I've already got data fetch installed, which means that the same way that I can run Giphy, I don't have a Giphy installed into this environment. I could, but don't worry about it. I can run a slash command. So I can go slash data fetch, or I can just go very simply say slash df, and I could just search for some term. So, all right, so right now, data fetch doesn't have any particular data sources connected to it. And so in my environment here, I can press new data source, choose Salesforce, obviously, and connect. There we go, using a connected app, connected directly into this environment, and boom, we're all set up. Now, we're all set up means that we now have the ability to configure it so that any particular object in Salesforce or any particular SQL query is now available to be connected to. So we've defaulted, we have a campaign. So it's a campaign as our starting point. Let me turn that one off and just make something super simple like lead searchable or contact searchable. Let's do contact. I'm going to make it so that contact here is searchable, where we default to be able to search by the name and the email address. And we default to some sort of template. So I'm going to go ahead and save this. And then in data fetch, we go, let's search for Scott. We click here and we can actually view details on that particular person in Salesforce. And if I want to, I can either go ahead and open directly from the conversation, or I can actually send that person into whatever general conversation is being had. And so I always tell people, like, I have the fastest demo in the world because it's literally, I can just search for a term and pull that back. And it's kind of all I do. But it doesn't matter what the object is. It doesn't matter kind of even what the data source is. If I wanted to say, look for, I believe in here I have an object called platforms. I have an object called platforms in here that has, I think, just one record in it. There we go. So if I wanted to say, search for platforms. So then I have the ability to kind of say, all right, well, here's what that object looks like. Now, if I wanted to change, if I wanted to use certain fields, you know, like if I wanted to rearrange the way that this looked in terms of name, maybe put the ID here. This is a layout template that allows us to kind of put together a Slack message.
Yeah, it's basically a Slack card, isn't it? I believe that's the terminology they use for Slack Dev. Okay.
It's a blocks.
Block. Okay.
Slack uses something called Slack Block Kit.
Okay.
So then, now if I search for the word Adobe, you can see here.
And you could be doing this in a chat with me at the same time.
Yeah.
And then we
That's
both.
exactly right.
So if I'm working a case, I could find out who else was working the case, start chatting with them, and pull details into the chat about the case.
That's exactly right. Yeah, and it's the funny thing about this tool. The funny thing about this tool, as I learn how to pitch it and to explain to people what this weird thing is that I'm doing, is that it's a horizontal tool. I always compare this to Tableau. Tableau and Power BI, from an abstract perspective, what do they do? Well, they make charts and graphs, and they're very good at it, right? Like that's a very reductive way to talk about what these BI tools might do. But their value really comes into like, what problems can you solve with it? When you take a look at data fetch, it's a custom search on Salesforce and many other platforms that's all available through a single command. And that's cool. Sometimes I always describe it, it's like, it's kind of cute just on its own. But where the value comes from something like this is when you apply it to different use cases, when you think about different departments and how they actually operate. So if you're a salesperson and you are the type of person who is jumping into a call at the last minute, and you want an easy way to just quickly pull up all the information on a that's known for a given person, that's available in either Salesforce or wherever, data fetch can literally search that email address again and see here's every mention of that person that we have inside of our company. If you are customer support and you need key information that's available either in Salesforce or someplace else, you can pull up that information no matter what object it is and laid out in whichever way is best suited for you. So if you wanted to set up, say, an account search that shows all of your custom fields laid out in groupings so that just somebody can quickly pull it up and say, all right, we're ready for this meeting, or all right, like, hey, we can see the last time this customer touched this or that, and you didn't have to worry about does the person who needs this information, are they themselves on the road to being a CTA? They can just quickly have the information as easily as they are used to using Slack. We've even found some really interesting use cases in the community play. So, a lot of people are actually part of a lot of different Slacks because they're parts of different, not only do they have internal ones that they're using for communication, but there's also a lot of communities out there, right? Like a perfect example would be Ohana Slack, right? Like, I mean, no, I'm certainly a member like everybody else here. And, like one of the use cases that we've found is that we can make a Slack community actually more valuable by adding in our / command data fetch, which was purposely like kind of given like an innocuous name, just sort of like a verb as a name, to make it so that people in a particular Slack community can search data that's been made available to them that is basically only available through this Slack community itself. So like there's a co-working space down here in Sydney that we're enabling it so that all of the mentors that are available through that thing are basically available at people's fingertips. So they don't have to go to a separate portal. They don't have to like go somewhere else. They could, if they need to speak to an advisor on marketing, an advisor on security or something like that, they literally can just, in the conversation that they're having, pull it up for themselves, or when somebody's asking for a resource, they can just kind of send them the right person. So yeah, so we're doing, so that's data fetch in a nutshell, essentially.
That's great. I'm sorry, my brain is gears are turning. I'm sending you all my mock data fetch commands into the chat here. So my head's yeah, daily. Hey, show me my Jira stories. Boom, boom, boom. Pull that up. I don't have to go to Jira anymore. Do a Capado promotion for this epic.
Yeah.
Bring me all the users, all the people who have touched case 456. That's the one I'm working right now, so I can start a chat with them like, hey, why isn't this case closed? Why does this customer think they've not gotten this done? Instant collaboration based on data. And I'm an old school collab guy, so
like We try and eat our own dog food. If I were to go into um, my internal development, so if I were to go here, and just like, so this is our internal development Slack for the ones creating data fetch. And if I were to say DF workspaces, we've set up a Google BigQuery that has all of the data around the usage of data fetch. And so if I view this insight, which is what we refer to as basically a query combined with a template like you saw me define, it actually just shows me all of the different workspaces that have installed data fetch along with kind of like usage graphs, right? So like we're kind of in a funny space, which is why I'm always struggling a little bit to explain to people what we're doing, because we're a little bit BI tool, a little bit search, a little bit internal tool builder. And yeah, all of those use cases you're just describing, like find my Jira stories, right? Yeah, that's a really great example of one that we are going to be probably going down the path of pretty quickly. Users of a particular case, yeah, like that's exactly what we're going towards.
Yeah, and it refolds my architect brain of, well, do I need this data in Salesforce, or do I just need it so I can see it and act on it? But am I just doing that in a collaboration context, or do I actually need it in Salesforce? Because putting data in Salesforce is expensive, and being able to shave off another slice of when you need to do that, and when that can stay in its remote thing and just access by search, that may be a bitter pill to swallow for people who've been doing it for a while. But I feel like I have to change my architecture perspective every 5 minutes. So this is it's an interesting pivot to understand. So I keep threatening to show my model of my understanding of doing Slack development. And I'll give the rough and you can correct me where I'm wrong, but Slack Central Server, if you build an add-on for it, if you build a module, it hosts that code in AWS, I think basically as a Lambda function. And so Slack Central knows when to call out to that instance and that code, and that code gets the data and pushes it back up to the Slack interface. Is that a fair representation of the architecture? Can you expand?
Yeah, so generally the way that Slack development works is that, I guess like so many platforms, they have an app management environment. You create a new app and you get a new client ID and client secret. Very, very simple, very straightforward. They have a bunch of surfaces that you have access to. And there's a lot of different ways to create a Slack app. There is the interfaces like we're using specifically, which is all about the / command stuff. There's like a home screen for your app itself that allows you to essentially create like a UI homepage built out of BlockKit, their native design paradigm. There's ways to send like direct messages to people using kind of like a bot, different from the / command stuff and different from your own homepage. And then there's all sorts of different lenses. So you create you decide to figure out like what you're trying to accomplish. And they give you a whole bunch of endpoints that you can use to interact with those services, as long as you've requested the right scopes. And so, yeah, it doesn't necessarily care where it lives. Like, you could be AWS or Google Cloud Platform, or Heroku, or wherever you're doing your stuff. For them, it's just a series of APIs, and they also have a stream of you can receive either a socket or webhooks to kind of receive event notifications. out of Slack. And it's, you know, it's honestly, it's pretty straightforward. Like you know, it's on you to set up your own servers and just interact with their APIs, kind of like as you would expect. And then once you've gone through and you've gotten the kind of the base case down for exactly how your app is supposed to work, then you go through this pretty lengthy checklist of, like, you know, complying with branding requirements, making sure you're not stepping on the toes of any of the other apps that are on their app store, and making sure that you never mention the word Slack as if you're like somehow part of Slack, and that you have like a certain level of quality, like you have a documentation site that has stuff on it and it could tell a person the basics on how to use your tool, all those types of things, and then you submit to the App Store, and it's pretty straightforward.
And I mentioned I had another idea pop up and typed in my new data fetch command, but the AWS instance, is that your instance or is that a Slack promoted instance? And because I think that's where the code lives, right?
No, so it's mine. Yeah.
Okay.
So like, so we haven't dealt with AWS at all in the whole process of working with Slack, because we build on Microsoft. We build on Google Cloud platform.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And so your code, your IO, all of your data costs, all your hosting cost, you own, you see in your portal, and you just have to keep that up with your subscription to manage your cost balancing. But really, your Slack app is running in wherever you host your code, and you own all of it, and it's just APIs back to the mothership to push into the user experience for whoever has got your tool installed.
Yeah, that's exactly right. As far as what your app actually is, it is it's your client ID and your client secret, so that you can create access tokens, along with any scopes that you're requesting when you get somebody to actually authenticate your app into their workspace. That's it.
Okay.
Yeah. And so, so that's, you know, the actual process of creating the app was surprisingly easy. I'm now going through I'm slowly wading through the process of learning how to get onto the app exchange, and learning the nuances of where do I put a connected app, and then versus where do I define a namespace, how important will namespaces be to me going forward, and how will I eventually tie this all into a managed package so I can get onto the app exchange. All of that is like where I'm going down now. The Slack stuff was quite straightforward. The Salesforce ecosystem stuff is where I'm now on my own road.
Okay. Yeah, I hope that video that we did, the presentation from Shops, helps a little, because I think he talked through a lot of that. Did you get a chance to watch that yet?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, it's been really, it was really, a lot of the early stuff that he's been through is it's extremely familiar.
Okay.
I'm still not 100% where I want to be.
Okay.
But I'm getting there. I'm much closer than I was.
Cool. Your app and has kind of looked like it had a little bit of a code-ish WYSIWYG block designer. Are you pushing to Slack blocks inside of Slack? Is there I think there's a corollary inside of Slack programming versus your interface.
Yeah. So everything that you do in Slack is everything is BlockKit. It's BlockKit UI is their defined thing, and we have basically tried to make it so that if we can build this tool with having as little of its own user interface as possible, we're going to do it that way. So in fact, the only reason that we have much of our own UI, where we are building that thing there, is that one, you like to define what a message looks like. We kind of needed to create an experience that would allow us to do that. And number two, from connecting to different services, there's no like real secure way to do that without your own web page and stuff like that. But if we take a look here, I'll pull up the screen again. So this screen. Yeah, so if we take a look at this builder, we are essentially, we are creating our own version of the block kit builder. So Slack block kit builder here. If you ever want to kind of like mess around and see what does it look like to establish a payload that you might want to be able to send through to Slack, they have this little builder here, which shows you here's what the payload is, obviously just defined in JSON, like I guess anyone who knows APIs would expect, and allows you to just sort of define things. And you can actually see, you can even move these blocks around. So it might be a little bit funny at first to get familiar with how BlockKit works and how it thinks of itself, because there's only a few types of blocks. And each block can only have a certain number of characters, etc. But once you get familiar with it, it starts to make sense. And the only thing that we've made a point to do is we are leveraging a library that helps us abstract some of these individual sections into something called into JSX, which is right. So just a slightly more human readable way to define those block objects. So I always feel like HTML is definitely, or HTML or XML are much easier to read than a JSON object. So we're doing that, and then chances are over time you're going to see us develop this part of it a little bit further to take away even some of the more scary HTML things and make it more of just maybe like a rich text editor plus. But yeah, that's kind of like what you're seeing there is really, it's not particularly it's not particularly like a clever or abstracted or anything like that. We're really just showing this, but in a slightly more human readable way. And then we're obviously then giving the users the ability to drop in tokens. So if I wanted to like kind of drag and drop something like this, then it will now render that value at whatever object.
I just wanted to call out the difference between the individual components, the Slack components versus the data fetch custom components. So everybody can learn both at the same time. Gotcha.
So that's what we're doing. And then of course, this is all with the, this is all, great with the object. So we've defined the idea of search. Searches will do exactly what it sounds like. Look for a given object that you've made searchable in the platform. And then insights are where we would go ahead and add in a SQL query. So this is where we would be able to just, like if there's something that you can run in, in the, what is it called? The whatchamacallit, the SQL, the query builder.
Yeah, query builder
or Workbench. If there's something you can run in that query builder, then you can place it in here and pull that data back as a some sort of report, whether it be multiple lines or just single aggregated data that you want to pull.
Including, so what languages are you written in? So the app datafetch.io website? Is that Go? Is that
So everything for data fetch itself is in it's in Nest.js, which is a subset of Node, which has
okay?
gotten pretty big over the past few years. So it's all Nest.js and which is done in TypeScript, and then the front end is all Angular. And we went with Angular versus like React or Vue, mostly because our front end guy had had a background in Angular. We could do it fast.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, that's not one that I've dabbled with.
Yeah,
I'm
Angular's honestly a bit dated, but it works. Our guy, we turn things around really quickly.
yeah, no, there's still a lot of fans of it. I'm a React and Vue and Moyez, are you still playing with Electron? Is that still around?
Yeah, so we've done a few apps and showed them at Dreamforce in Electron, but mainly it allows us to essentially download an entire app onto a desktop and launch from the desktop as well. So it's got its specific niche, but it's a little bit cumbersome to use, in my opinion.
Okay. Yeah, just dragging other people into the conversation. And if you let me, I will turn this whole thing into a JavaScript thing. I've been a JavaScript dev for too long. So love me every flavor of JavaScript. The server side stuff, I'm still mad at all the server side compilation that goes on that has hijacked my term of JavaScript, which was a client side DOM scripting language, an interaction developer. But anyway, that was my jam for too long, and I'm still having trouble letting go of that that view.
So, can I ask a question here, and that's somewhat non-technical? How are you pricing your product, sir?
Great question. So we are still figuring out exactly how we want to price it out. But generally, what I'm kind of going with right now is that we want to get to about $16 per user per month. And we want to get it to kind of a floor of about $4,000 a year as a list price. Okay. So about 20 users as like a starting point. That is, what we don't want to do is we don't necessarily want to do this based on like consumption, like how many searches can you do, or how many detailed views can you do, or anything like that. Okay. Because I want people to feel like this is the missing feature of Slack, or that it's a standard feature of Slack, kind of the way that Poly.ai gets viewed, where it's just like every instance of Slack out there, generally you find Poly, and generally you find Giphy already sort of installed into that environment. I kind of want to be the same thing. I don't want people to be like, well, how many searches do I have? Like, I don't want to give people a reason to not use me.
Right.
That said, we are still very flexible in kind of figuring out what is the pricing model that's going to ultimately work for this thing. Okay. Yeah, but I've always been a fan of like letting people let people be very predictable with the monthly fee.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm with you. I am. You're the first, and it's the model makes so much sense and fits the change. So you're kind of that pioneer breaking first ground. So wish you luck with it. But hey, this is, once seeing it, it's like, yeah, this is obvious. Everybody should be doing their development like this. Can
I point out one of the things? I know that this is all about like the more technical aspects of developing in the ecosystem of Salesforce overall, right? one of the most interesting and difficult parts of this whole thing is called Slack account binding. And if there's something that I can encourage people to kind of like learn about, if they're trying to like do something that's really good and like enterprise ready, it's probably that. So Slack account binding is basically what makes it so that your Slack user can be tied to a given user in a target system. So if you're building your own SaaS app and you want to make it so that a user who's using a slash command or interacting with some sort of bot or whatever is always working with the correct account, then going down this path of making sure that basically it's not like you're adding that capability to the entire Slack workspace. You're making it so that particular Slack user can interact with their particular account in their overall instance of whatever platform.
Mapping their Slack identity and put to a context inside of a Slack or inside of a Salesforce or another application permission structure.
That's exactly right. That's a space that, like, you know, it's not hard, but it's kind of like needing to understand identity management as a whole, like going down the world of Okta or you know, 1Pass or any of those things. For us, that was incredibly important to make sure that we had a real strategy around, because if you think about what we're actually doing, is we're making it so that, you know, a regular, very simple person could just search somewhat sensitive data. And so we needed to make sure that if I've connected this particular account of Salesforce to Slack, well, I'm not connecting it so that everyone can search it. I'm connecting it so that I can search it. And then if I want other people in my environment to be able to search it, then I can invite them. We have a bug there. So I can invite them like that. Or we can go so far as to kind of create, we're actually working on this right now, creating like a public concept where it's like a workspace wide. So where we're essentially going to make like a, you know, you can develop your own data sources that everybody in the company can subscribe to if they want. But thinking through how that interplay works is going to be it's an important thing to really nail down as people go down their journey of like working with Slack.
So is your current data pattern, and sorry, my head is just going everywhere. I'm all going to be all over the place. So sorry for non sequiturs. Right now it is from Slack, call from other systems and bring that data into Slack. Do you have are you working with any other pathways? Is it, hey, I'm something happened in Salesforce and I can push to a data fetch endpoint and send out to On24 and Slack at the same time?
We're not doing that pattern. So this has been this has been a bit of a bugaboo for me for a while. No matter what company I'm working for or with, the number of Slack notifications that I get all day are insane and are the opposite to me of the whole idea of deep work. I can't focus when I have like a badge that says you've got 24 notifications that are sitting there. You know, it's just, I oftentimes want to know key bits of information to be told to me when they're really important, that I need to know about them right now. Something's down, something's you know, there's a customer that's on fire or something like that. But 9 times out of 10, I didn't need that notification. And so yet most platforms, when they think about like, I'm going to create a Slack integration, what they think about is we're going to make it so that we send a webhook to trigger a notification to some channel in Slack. And that's what our integration is. And I hate that.
Okay.
And so, I also like, that already exists so much that I'm kind of going the other way around. And I'm trying to say, no. Get the data to come to you right now when you need it, when you're looking for it, so that you don't have to go to a million places to look for it, rather than the other way around. That said, one of the surfaces that we are going to be going down is like subscription to a particular topic that you would maybe set on a timed basis. So my history before this, I mean, I like the technology that I've frequently worked in is event software for the past, like, say, 5 years. I've been in various types of virtual event software. And one of the use cases that I've never seen people do is make it so that, like, on a daily or a weekly basis, you can get the like a download link to the registration list for a given event sent to you or sent to a particular channel. I'm going to be like creating through data fetch the ability to take a given object that you found or a given insight that you have defined, and make that something that you set to automatically resend either on a weekly or daily basis. So that's going to be a pattern that we go down.
Cool. I love it because I don't like it, and I love the challenge because it breaks my frame. The thing that I'm with you, but not with you, and I've got to get there. And I'm just going to say out loud to spark conversation that so when I send you a message in Slack saying, "Hey, I've got something to talk about," I'm able to ping you, interrupt you, and get into your communication stream.
Yes.
I am making that choice to interrupt you. I've got something important. Why wouldn't I be able to do that from a broader or higher level channel? And then my other piece of that is my favorite piece is I don't have to go check those other channels. I can, my organization said Google is integrated with Slack. Cool. When I have a meeting or when I want to create a meeting, I can do it from the command line, but when a meeting is coming up, I get an alert and I get that notification. So that push alert helps me run my day. So I agree. And I'm also starting to think, okay, is Slack working because people haven't figured out how to spam it yet? And is that the thing, or and do we need to kind of raise that, or? Yep, sorry.
I think those things are super useful. Like, that's what you'll hear me talking about this particular aspect of it. Like, I'm always going to be couching what I say, because I'm never going to say that notifications aren't useful. I'm saying that, like, you can set up if you actually have the Jira integration turned on for Slack, then you'll see some channel that will have a notification of every time somebody has created a new Jira issue. And every single time someone has updated a Jira issue or assigned a Jira issue, or like whatever it is, you can have a notification for that. Mm-hmm. And it's like, that is very well intentioned and generally so loud and so voluminous that it's not useful. And then everyone, like the average company, I did a bit of research on this. I think the source was Blissfully does an annual analysis of different data silos that are in different like the amount of data silos in a given company broken out by size. I have a small video on this on our YouTube channel, and if you have a company that has under 100 people, then the average number of data sources that a given company has is like 100. And then the from 100 to 1,000 people, the average number of data sources is, I think it's 160. And then if you have over 1,000 people, the average number of data sources is like 288. And so I don't want 160 different platforms sending automatic notifications whenever they think something is interesting for me to pay attention to. I don't care.
One of the things I see data fetch doing is being that central communication manager. We don't let people push. We decide what our whole collaboration group is going to get and what they have access to, and be able to set a communication pattern there. I had a big problem with that with franchisee communication working at 7-Eleven. Every department in the company wanted to send the franchisees messages daily. And they had to create an entire department to take proposed communications, put it into a newsletter ranked with the top 10 only, and everybody else direct your queries to that brick wall there. We are not flooding the value of all messages is deteriorated whenever you get so many that people don't want to deal with it.
That's it.
Yep.
That is why I've stayed towards, like, I want it to be an on-demand thing. It brings up such a great point, though. I mean, like, should data fetch also offer kind of like a digest of all of the other things that could be coming at you that you can just quickly pull up, being like, here's everything that you personally should know, maybe. But I want to make sure that we've nailed down all of the core base case stuff that makes it so it's super easy for a user to define a fetch of some sort and deploy that fetch either for themselves or for their entire in their entire organization in a really easy way before I start getting into like more clever, nuancy type stuff.
Yeah, I want to see an AI-driven governor that receives requests and passes them along based on, have you sent too many today? If so, I'm going to send you 20 back to the source to say, stop doing this, or whatever your process is breaking our acceptable use pattern for user communications. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, the MCP exactly right. For a data fetch.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. You know, Slack and Teams are the way the world is communicating now, right? And so I don't know any organization that doesn't have one of those two. And then Discord is on their heels in the crypto and gaming space, and then Telegram exists in funny pockets as well. And then there's other stuff. But Slack and Teams are where it's at. And I do think that we are going to have to see at some point a like kind of a governance mechanism for making sure that people aren't going to get drowned out, and then therefore devaluing the value of these collaboration platforms in a similar way that in marketing automation platforms, you can often set a max frequency of how many times you can email a given person in a given period of time. I can totally see the idea of in a given community, you can only have an automated message to a particular person X number of times in a period of hours.
There was it's good. I love that this is coming up early. There used to be a thing. So back when Salesforce, when SharePoint was leaning into the search space, and search engines were popping up, there was, and I'm trying to think of the term so I can Google it, but it was like the search fail cycle, the search engine fail cycle. And our old search engine doesn't provide good results. So we buy a new search engine. We don't train people on how to tag things or properly index things. So the search results are terrible. So we buy a new search engine. I foresee it's a healthy communication channel. Let's figure out how to ruin it by doing all the things we've done in the past that make people I don't want to go to email because it is all corporate notification stuff sent by every group, and I'm getting pinged every 5 minutes. And signatures are 90 miles long because it's unlimited sizes, because somebody pushed for an extra signature that's now bigger than the text, and I can't grok it. I can't grep it. So I don't want to use email anymore, even though it's all the same thing. If we agreed to email sanity rules, we wouldn't have to have moved to Teams. We wouldn't have to, Slack. When Teams started becoming more like email, the Slack becomes more like that minimalist. Blog pages, yeah, GeoCities driving Twitter to exist, stuff like that.
Yeah.
I was there when they turned off the blink tag in HTML because people had ruined it, and they were close to turning off the animated GIF feature because 700 on a page ruined the experience of a page. So yeah, we won't get into ecology and stuff and how we can ruin anything. But anyway, so I digress. This great stuff. Good. Yeah, no, power to you moving that concept forward. I hope you don't get run over by the we always did it this way shenanigans of trying to move into the new space and ruin it with the stuff we used to do in the olden days. Start blogging, tag all the UX people on that, and get that into the discussion, because I think that's huge.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, I will. Yeah.
Anyone else have any questions? We lost a couple attendees. Moyez, anything else? Anything you want to know on the architecture here? I've gone heavy conceptual on UX with this, and I'd intended to go deep on architecture, but que sera.
That's wonderful, Tim. I actually wasn't aware of your product, so thank you very much for waking up in the middle of the night to share that with us.
No problem.
Please keep us informed. I think there is space in the corporate world for your type of product. Once it's baked and you know what the pricing is and those types of things, I'm happy to work with you to introduce it to our clients.
Awesome.
I think we're just beginning to see at the corporate level, at the Fortune 50, Fortune 500 level, my clients beginning to understand and use the platform the way it should be used. We still have a lot of clients when we introduce them to the idea of the minimalist nature of Slack, saying, immediately eyes glazed over, saying, I don't need another communications channel. And I think if we can bring to them the value of being minimalistic, having that filter that says, at this moment, this is what's important to me, hold everything else back. Kind of in the old days, the way your secretary or your assistant would, right? That Moyes is having a bad day, don't bother him unless it's important. In the absence of that type of a filter, we have deteriorated into the kind of work environment that Paul was talking about. I think that as consultants, Paul, what we can do to kind of return back to normalcy is to put these filters foremost in the mind of our clients and say, you might think that everything is important, right? But what you need is a definitive approach to saying everything other than what's important to your workforce in the moment, there's got to be a way to hold it off. And we're here to show you how to do that. So that's where I think, Tim, we can engage with the larger clients. Thank you again for waking up in the middle of the night to share this with us. I'll engage with you, and I know others on this group will engage with you in order to bring it to market. Please keep us informed on once you've got the pricing kind of mapped out and your go-to-market strategy pinned down. I'd love to re-engage.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I'll definitely connect for sure. And I kind of want to expand on that, just the like on what you're talking about with the corporate, like where I see things, like where it's all going. The reason that I actually created this thing, like even though if it kind of feels like a techie product, and if you especially if you demo it to us, we want to talk about the architecture. We want to talk about where all of this stuff is going to ultimately end up, kind of pontificate and do our thinking. But the purpose of something like data fetch is, when you think about the Fortune 50, right, is that even in very high tech companies, the Googles and the Facebooks of the world or whatever, you have a lot of people that are not particularly technical. You have a lot of people that are not tech savvy, and would be scared to death of having to learn what the difference between a post and a get is, much less what HTTP means. And so many of those people too need data to operate throughout their day in an effective way. And they're afraid of Salesforce, and they're certainly afraid of anything like a Redshift or some stuff like that. And they're not gonna learn Tableau. They're not gonna even learn Domo or Looker. Like, they're just not gonna. They're just simply a subset of. Paul, you work at Accenture. You've got an army of people that are extremely technical, and yet I'll bet you could find, enough people to fill a stadium that would be like, yeah, I can send a GIF and that's what I can do, right? I'm good at my marketing job, or I'm good at whatever I bring to the table. I'm not, look at that thing. I'm not going in there. That's you guys. I want to get it to the point where if people know how to send a GIF, then they can be trained to access that little bit of information in a way that they don't need to get a certification. They don't need to open up another tool, right? They can just go ahead and do what they normally do, but instead of it being a GIF, it's being data that's real time inside your organization. And I think that how do you that's why we're creating data fetch. That's in fact the reason that we're even we're trying to make a tool that is not, I want you to come to my interface. I want most people to never know how to go to that white UI that we showed today. I want most people in the world to just be like, I'm in Slack, and Slack has / commands. When we expand at some point, when we go to the point where we have we already have Microsoft Teams as well, so that is definitely a thing. But when we're going to have Gmail, we're going to have PowerPoint, we're going to have Outlook, we're going to have Google Slides. You're going to wherever you live, we're going to make it so your data is just available to you. That's going to be a weird paradigm shift for people, because you are presumed right now to just have to hunt down all of the little bits of data that exist all in your organization by going to those silos. And that's what we want to break. That's hard, but that's the problem that we're solving.
Yeah, putting it into tighter and tighter encapsulations and UIs to where people can't break it, I think is really the way Salesforce is heading and where they do stuff. This is so hard. You have to know what you're doing to do everything, but everything that you can get away with being kind of sloppy is super easy, and you're empowered. And they're blurring the lines, and there's still some segments there, but I think that carving out paths of, here you can do stuff to help yourself, but not enough to hurt yourself, and continuing to unfurl those sails for people and guide those in there so that they don't get a developer and do something dumb, is the way forward. It's hard. It's hard being a technologist not to assume everybody else is going to learn, and that you have to keep the training wheels on. But I think you're absolutely right that that's the way to go. There will just there will always be people that are trying to do functional and don't have time to dig into it. And saving them the hassle of learning new interfaces is amazing. Not having to learn things and kind of standardizing on how we move data around is great in today's world. Viva la difference in the past, but now that we have 188 sources of data that we've got to talk to every day, enough's enough. And my brain can only take so many paradigm shifts and keep so many meta models, and asking people to learn new ones every 5 minutes. Yeah, we have new data, new stuff is popping up, but let's standardize how we get that to people. Totally agree.
Another thing about the reason, one of the bits of pushback that I get on data fetch quite a bit is why, hey, don't you realize that there's already a ton of slash commands out there? Like, don't you know that Salesforce, you can type /Salesforce, or hey, don't you know with HubSpot, you can type /HS dash some various commands. There's a whole bunch of that stuff that already exists. And my response to that is always like, when you're searching for something that you want to know, do you go to every different place that data could exist? Or do you go to Google? Have you just been trained to I'm just going to Google it? Data fetch, the reason we've done it as the reason we called it data fetch, we want it to be a verb, and we want it to be, it all works the same way for the same reason, right, Paul? We want to get to the point where it's just like, people don't have to think about how does this work. I can just data fetch it, and it'll just give me back the results.
Yeah, somebody else needs to decide when I ask for today's stats, what that means and why that's relevant and where that data comes from. And if it comes from someplace new, if the report data is invalid, I don't need to write my own report. I don't need to be part of the report migration. I need the data fetch, the data communication manager, the data conduit manager, the product manager, to repoint my system to where the new data lives. And make it to where I don't have to think about it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yes.
Recurring theme, definitely.
I see Bill Wu has some questions.
Yeah.
Oh,
thanks, James. I really like this idea. I mean, I'm a technical person, but I hate go to those UIs to learn how to get the data. I just have some follow-up questions about that account funding. So when you set up, as you demoed, you set up as the connection with Salesforce, and you invite some users. So they don't need to authenticate to that connect again individually. They will directly use a /df and search.
Right. Yeah. So I was having this conversation 2 days ago. So there are, right now in our platform, there's three types of visibility that we offer. Private, it's all yours. You don't, no one else sees it or searches it. Invite only, where no one can find it without you inviting them to it, but you can share it, and there you're sharing your authentication. And then there's workspace. Workspace is anyone can find it, and we give them a place where they can look at all of the data sources that are available for that particular Slack workspace or Teams environment. The fourth one that we need to add at some point will be invite only, but you have to bring your own auth, or workspace, but you bring your own auth, where you've defined, here's the right way to search Salesforce. But you have to bring your own authentication. We've just set up all of the different searches and all of the different insights. All of those have already been done, and you just have to authenticate as your own account so that you're still scoped to you. We don't do that quite yet, and I'm not sure. Basically, we're gonna wait for the customers to require that. But it's a really good call out that right now, the way data fetch works today, if you're rolling out to if you're having multiple people access the same data source, then you are sharing credentials.
Okay. Yeah, that answered my question, because that might be a concern for some clients.
Yeah.
Because essentially they can search in a larger scope.
100%. 100%.
And,
That is,
yeah. Another question is about that workspace connection. You mentioned you can make that a workspace of Slack, kind of sharing a pool of experts. How exactly that part works?
so let me give you let me show you the example that that we actually implemented at this co-working space that I made a reference to earlier. So if I share my screen again, so you can see I'm in all of these different instances of Slack. This one is Fishburners. Fishburners is this co-working space in you know, incubator, and you know, they do a lot. They do a lot. So here, let's say that I wanted to you know, look up somebody who maybe, like, actually, I'll just search this particular community for Salesforce. So this person right here, I guess he gets a shout out on this podcast. This person here is an expert in residence that mentions Salesforce as one of the things that he's an expert in. So I just looked that up for myself, and that's great. I can use that. I can, you know, they've got links in this Airtable that's serving up this data that allows me to just immediately book some time with him or pop open his LinkedIn. But maybe it's not me who needed this information. I just happened to know someone's like, hey, does anybody know some Salesforce people? And I just found a mentor in the community and can send that into the conversation. And now that's in whatever public channel I'm doing, right? So we are kind of massaging this to make sure that it is a really solid experience, that all the data is all good. And then we are going to be rolling this out so that anybody in the entire community that this company fosters can use that same /df command, and it's powered by an Airtable, right? Could be powered by anything, but everyone has access to it. No one has to configure anything. And actually, you might have even seen here, as I was showing some of this permission stuff, you see this auto subscribe. That's what's going to make it so that this data source, once we turn it on for everybody, boom, everyone automatically has the ability to just be subscribed to it. So the rollout is going to be dead simple.
Okay, yeah, thanks. That makes sense now. Thank you very much. That's all my questions.
So that's it. I think the community workspace, the community use case is going to be is surprisingly one that people have glommed onto. I recently did 2 other demos that were both like once I told them that about this idea of adding data itself, adding functionality to the community, making the community itself more valuable by literally putting resources at people's fingertips rather than trying to also force them to some portal or some web page that you're trying to maintain. People were like, that's going to save me time. So I'm pretty excited.
I think even for internally, I mean, in a company, we have 100 employees with different expertises. We don't know each other's strong suit is. That thing can be very helpful as well. As long as we have a repo about a list of each person's kind of best skills, we can fetch that and find the right person easily without asking in the channel who has experience with Copado, whatever.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, no. So sorry, go ahead.
I'm happy, just so you know, Bill, I'm happy to help you set that up. If you guys are using Slack internally, I'm happy to have a call.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, that would be awesome.
So one last crazy. So you're talking about replacing the random company branded, totally unique styled community with a standard interaction with a variety of data built into, instead of having experienced communities. Hey, this is our Slack channel. This is where you come interface with my brand. You don't have to learn my website. You don't have to figure out 35 different menus to hit the 5 things we do on this website. You don't type /, see what our commands are, and here are 5 channels with our 5 different types of support. You already know this. I'm not building you a new interface. I'm not making you learn a new place. I'm providing you if we get there, a comfortable, streamlined interaction capability. I think that's one of the successes that people are seeing with, tying marketing to Facebook Messenger and tying marketing to SMS. They've learned text. That may be the only app they want to learn this decade. If we add one more that everybody centralizes on around, that could take off like wildfire.
Yeah, I think it already has taken off. Like I know at least 10 Slack communities for softwares that I use or interact with. I know them off the top of my head. Like there's like my old company that I love so much, Splash. There's a Splash user group community, and they just have like event people. A lot of people are event people that aren't even necessarily Splash customers currently, but they're just kind of talking all the time. I'm very much, I'd love to see it if we could make it to the point where you could just make that community a little bit better by saying like, hey, here's a list of upcoming events that are really relevant to this particular community, and it's just available at your fingertips. You don't even have to like go onto our website or whatever to copy and paste it. It's just always at your fingertips. Yeah, that's what we want to do.
Cool.
And I think I've read some articles about Slack. A lot of companies are using that as a marketing tool. So you can have kind of button on your website, then you can join their lead channel, and they can follow the whole process of converting leads to a closed deal in Slack.
Yeah,
which is way more efficient than the traditional way, just spamming you with some marketing email and put a call to action. You may do nothing.
Yeah, completely. That's exactly where it's going.
All right, man. It's got to be 3:30 your time. Sorry.
Oh, that's all good. That's all right. I know
I'm
we do have,
2 hours ahead. I'm in New Zealand.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
Well, great, Bill. Any more questions? I'm having too much fun just shooting the breeze. I'm trying to rein myself in and let you go to sleep.
No more questions from my side. That's awesome. Eye-opening, really.
Yeah, very. You folded my brain, I think, at least 3 times. So.
Awesome. Well, look, I just want to say thank you very much to yourselves, to Megan for introducing me to you guys, and for the opportunity to come in, just talk. This is, yeah, I'm having fun here, so I really appreciate it, and it's fun to talk shop like this, and especially obviously about this thing that I'm so passionate about. So
that's great. Yeah, no, loved it, enjoyed it. I'm going to have to write down some notes of the stuff I want to follow back up with on in public forums and get discussion going, because I think you're leading the edge in a lot of places that end up being trailing once we ruin an ecosystem. So great to discuss now. So yeah, awesome. It's a UX focus. It's whether the UX people get to it first before the spam people get to it, and that's the race. So I'm betting on it. All right, well, thanks. I'll go ahead and close the session for now. Thank you again, Tim, for your time in the middle of the night. Thanks, Bill. Thanks, Moyez, for joining. I know you had to drop off and you're not here anymore, but Enjoyed it. We'll get this posted soon, and hopefully everybody else can participate, and I can start pointing people to the discussion. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank
All right.
you.
All right, bye.
Bye-bye.